This warm-up we didn't do in front of you for ToDoodle 27. On a camping trip, there are 18 people and they want to share 30 strips of bacon, and you're going to cut the bacon in pieces to see what works. Our first draft of a guess was if we make each strip into 2 pieces, pretend these are a smaller strip and we just get halves of it. Then if I do times 30, 30 times 2 would be 60 pieces. Could that help us share? So we looked at counting by 18s, 18 times 1, 18 times 2, and you can use your calculator. You don't have to know your 18 times tables, because who does that? And 60 wasn't there. This is not helpful. Cutting your bacon strips into 2 pieces didn't help share. But we noticed 90, that seems a lot like a 30 kind of number. It's 30 times 3. So if we took our bacon and instead cut it into 3 pieces, then 30 of those would be 90, and everybody could have 5 of them, a whole strip and 2 more. And then no one would fight about the bacon. So this is the kind of thinking you'll do with fractions later on. I have 2 numbers that don't really seem too friendly together, 18 and 30. So I'm going to see, counting by 18s, what I get. And I'm going to see, counting by 30s, what I get. And when those match, then something special happens. Okay, but for now, we'll back up a little. So we have these kitchen fractions. They have a 1 on top. They're called unit fractions. And that's all that the ancient Egyptians did. They might have been the only fractions people wrote for thousands of years. And if it lasted for thousands of years for them, then we're not going to rush to use other fractions. What happens in the unit fractions when the bottom is also 1? So not only do we have a 1 on top to make it a unit fraction, but the bottom is also 1. So there's my square. It has 1 piece. That's the total. I'm going to shade in one of them. What happens?
Does that mean it's a whole number?
Yeah, that's just the number 1. So this is just a funky way to write the number 1. It's 1 out of 1 thing. Something to talk to your math C teacher about. Is a fraction 1 number or 2? Lots of people will say 1/2 is a number, right? I see it on the ruler. I see it on the measuring tape. It's right there. It's just a number. But when most people look at 1 divided by 2, they think that's 2 numbers, and we're combining them with division. But these are pretty much the same thing. It's a whole that we've chopped into 2 parts, and we're caring about 1 of those. So how come this one seems to be 1 number and this one seems to be 2? It's a great way to torture your next teacher. Make them try and explain this. One answer is maybe this isn't 1 number. If we see it on the ruler, 1/2 of an inch, it looks like 1 number, but really it's sort of a process happening. Or maybe another answer is, well, it's how we write it. This one we're writing with a fraction bar, and this one we have an arithmetic operation, and so that makes it 2 numbers. Or maybe you'll say this is actually just 1 number. It's 1/2 or 0.5 or 50% or whatever you call it, just because you write it complicated doesn't mean it's more than one thing. Just like if you write the number 1 funky, that doesn't mean it's not the number 1. So any of those answers might make sense to your brain. Anyone want to share which one they like? Only Cheyenne's birds, and I don't speak bird. Okay. We can use pictures or a number line to compare them. We did comparison with the birthday cakes on the last ToDoodle. So let's have you shade things again. Which is bigger, a half or a third? So somebody with one color shade a half of this, and someone with another color shade a third of this, and we'll see what's bigger. It's okay if your shadings overlap. That's not a problem. Okay, so there's a sort of ocean colored half on the top. How about the third? What would a third look like? No, don't use the other one yet. Do a third on this side. Don't rush us. Do a third on this side. Let me help. If I want to split this into thirds, it's more natural to go up and down. Everyone okay that those are thirds now?
Yeah.
So 1/2 was the nice ocean stuff on top. That was 3 squares. 1, 2, 3. 1/3 has how many squares?
Two.
On 6.
Yeah. Everyone okay with that? I want to actually erase this blue part because I want the blue to very much look like the half. Okay, so the half was 3 squares. 1, 2, 3. The third was 2 squares. Right? 1, 2. So half is bigger than a third. Which of these number lines makes it easiest to draw 1/2? We have the small be 0 and this part be 1. Where would 1/2 be?
In the middle?
In the middle. Okay, so right there, that's where a half is. How about a third? Can somebody show me with a marker where a third would be? Yeah,
Right
this
here.
would be 1/3. And this would be 2/3. And then this would be all 3/3. So you can see on the number lines, 1/2 is bigger than 1/3. Just like up here, 1/2 is bigger than 1/3. Everyone okay on the left side?
I'm thinking of measuring cups when I do that.
Yeah, that's fine. My measuring cups are just, yeah, 1/2 is bigger than 1/3. It's a little harder to deal with on the Jamboard. I had to use
yeah.
boxes. Okay, now on the right, which is bigger, 1/3 or 1/6? You can use the boxes, you can use the number lines below. Tell me which of those is bigger and defend your answer.
Sorry, so we saved this one too?
Would you, one or the other, or both if you want. I'm seeing a lot. Somebody use some words and tell me what I should look at with all of these green lines.
I think I don't know, is that the 1/6? The
So-
6
so-
squares and then shading one of them?
So the 1/6 is, yes, this square here was your 1/6.
Yeah,
6.
I was having trouble with my colors and how bright they were looking and how dark they were. I didn't know what I was doing with the colors.
And someone was trying to shade 1/3 light blue, it looks like. So if we did that, it would be one of these thirds again, right? Because here's 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. So which is bigger by shading, the third that's blue or the 6th that's diagonal hash marks?
One-third.
The third. It looks like it's twice as big. It's 2 boxes instead of 1. We already did the number line for thirds. Can somebody show me where a 6th is on one of the number lines?
Right there?
Yes. I'm not going to trust my eyeballs though. So I'm going to look at the bottom one that actually has 6 different marks on it. And since the 1/6 was green hash marks up above, I'm going to copy that here so that we can see. So 1/6 is half as much to 1/3. You are right. It is also right here, though.
So I was right. This is 1/3 bigger than 1/6? Or am I wrong?
1/3 is twice
Okay.
as much as 1/6. It's 2 of the
Nice.
squares instead of 1.
Nice, okay.
Everyone happy with this page?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just as a comment, you might have noticed that some number lines some number line things lined up. So 1/3 is the same as 2/6, right? They're both right there. Or 1/2, 2/4, 2/6, they all lined up together. And there were lots of ways to say 1. You could write 1 as 1/2. I'm sorry, one. You can write 1 as 2/2. I can math, okay. Or 3/3, or 4/4, or 6/6. Those are all different ways of writing 1. So we'll talk about that in Math C. Again, if it has something not a 1 on top, that's a Math C fraction. But now you see how they work. Sometimes they are the same as others, and we'll call that reducing or unreducing, going from 1/3 to 2/6, or 2/6 to 1/3. You can't really do that with only unit fractions, because at least one of them has to have something that's not a 1 on top, if they're equivalent. We can ask about combinations. How many thirds are needed to cover 1.5 rectangles? So I can shade a third. Oops. And then I'm going to use my fancy teacher powers and say I'm going to make a copy of that. Okay. So how many thirds do I need to cover 1.5 rectangles? There's a second third. There's a third third. There's a fourth third. Have I covered 1.5 rectangles yet? To cover half of this other one, I would need 3 boxes. Because a half has 3 boxes. Have I covered 3 boxes yet? No, so I need 1 more. So how many thirds are needed to cover 1.5 rectangles? I would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's not going to cover exactly. Maybe you can put into words why it doesn't work exactly, but it's a little tricky. Our warm-up for the other ToDoodle involved thinking about different ways to shade 1/2. So that's the kind of thinking we're doing here. It might be easiest for this second rectangle not to think about 1, 2, 3 that way, but to think about 1, 2, 3 squares that way. That's also half of this rectangle. And this didn't quite cover them all up. I need another third. Everyone okay with this one? This is not one you have to do now. This is just getting things in your brain so they're kind of, you've seen it before when Math C comes on. Okay, here's one for you to actually do. Put the 4 flags on the track. We're starting here at the starting thing and moving this way. So somebody put the blue flag at 1/2 of the lap. Where would that go? Where would the green flag go? Where would 1/3 of the lap be? We're not going to be exact about this because it's a kind of awkward shape. Yeah, kind of like that. How about 1/4 of the lap? a third is less than a half, so I like this area better, right? Because that would be about 1/3, and then you'd keep going and you'd have 2/3, and then you'd keep going and there's 3/3, and these look to be kind of the same. That makes sense? Like a peace symbol kind of thing. So I think that's where the green goes. Not sure why this is above those. Okay, now they're coming up. Okay, yellow is sort of like putting things in quarters. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that looks good. And then red would be 1/6 of the lap. Where would that go? Pretty close, right? Remember, 1/6 was half of a third. So however much you thought the third was, then getting halfway there is where the red should go. So someone decided that, hey, those are different fractions. Let's put water stations there so the joggers are always close to 1. Is that going to work out?
No.
No, all this spot here doesn't have any water stations. So, ta-da. Good job. Okay, last note, when you compare fractions, that's really annoying. No one likes comparing fractions. So what do people do in real life so they don't have to compare fractions? They used hundredths. So this is a hundredths grid, 10 by 10, and I can shade a half of it. So I would go and shade a half. Everyone okay with my green shading? Can you see it well enough on this?
Yeah.
How many hundredths did I shade just now?
Half.
Yeah, so it's half of them. How many out of 100?
50.
50. Yeah, don't think too hard about it. If I wanted to shade a quarter of my grid, well, here's the top corner. So how many did I shade there? Think about money. What's a quarter of 100?
25.
75.
Altogether,
You know-
75. Yeah.
Yeah, altogether
The
75.
other one, if I wanted to do a fifth, well, I could do that. So 1 out of 5, so that would just be 2 out of the 10. How many boxes did I just shade there?
20.
20. That's hard to see. I'm going to write it above 20. Or if I wanted to shade 1/10, well, there I go. Here's a 10th. And I shaded 10. So now we don't have to worry about quarters and halves and fifths and tenths and think about fractions. I can just say, which is bigger, 50 or 20? Which is bigger, 25 or 20? That's much nicer. So that's what people do. What's the special name for what we just did, by the way, out of 100?
Comparing fractions?
What?
No. Comparing fractions?
No. If 50 out of 100 people prefer this kind of cookie or ice cream or something, what word do we use for out of 100?
Oh, I know it's right there.
It's right there on your tongue, I can see. If you talk about half of 100, half of a whole as 50 something, what do you say? It's 50.
You got me in this one. I can't.
Mhm.
You need a hint.
Yeah.
Just please.
I don't think you need a hint. Okay, the hint somewhere there. What do we call out of 100?
Percent.
Percentage.
Percent, yeah. You know that. It's just not on your tongue because we're not talking.
I knew it was there.
So this is what percent is. Percent is that fractions are stupid. We don't want to use fractions. We're going to use only out of 100 to compare things. And that makes our lives so much easier. We can think about money. We can easily see which is bigger, 50 or 25, right? That's much nicer than like quarters and fifths and so on. So we will do a little more with fractions, but not too much. Mostly we're going to move on to percentages as soon as we can, because that's what people do, right? Why play with fractions when percents are so much friendlier? Okay, it's 7:08. I think we need to do our little break and we're done with this ToDoodle.